We're now at the 5th video in this series, and I would like to show you how to create primitive objects and different ways of selecting them. We talked about these tabs. I want to make sure I'm on the Polygons tab, and then I have this shelf full of icons. These first ones are primitive three-dimensional objects. They're basic shapes that you can use to create a basis for the models that you want to make. And there's all sorts of ways of manipulating them after you've created them. But we can create any number of these primitive objects simply by clicking on the icon in the toolbox and then clicking and dragging in our scene. With the cube, I have to click a spot and drag a square on my two-dimensional plane, and then I have to click again and lift up or down to create the third dimension of the cube. With a cylinder, similarly, I have to click and drag from the center out to make the circle, and then I click again to lift up or down to create the cylinder. With a sphere, it's one click and drag from the center to make the sphere the size that I want. A cone, click and drag to make the circular base, click and lift up to create the cone shape. And these are left clicks I'm doing, but you notice I'm still holding Alt from time to time, or Option, the Option key, to move my view around, as we talked about in a previous video. So if you're not comfortable doing that, you need to keep practicing. A plane is a good primitive object. A plane is really just a two-dimensional shape, but it's here in my three-dimensional scene. The polygon pipe is really a cylinder that I click to drag the base circle, click a second time to create the height, and click a third time to create the center ring. So I have a three-dimensional pipe section. Torus is our donut, and I click once to expand the diameter of the ring, and then the second click allows me to create the ring radius, the radius that goes around the torus. Okay, so I have those two adjustments I can make when I create those shapes. That's most of our set here. I think I forgot the pyramid, which is really just a square with a pyramid top, and you're able to create it with one click and drag movement. So those are some of our primitives. Let me review selecting objects in a little more depth here. Okay, so if you look over to the left column, these first three icons have to do with selecting objects. The first one is our basic select tool, so one click allows us to select basically any object in the scene. If I hold down Shift and click, then I'm adding to that selection and selecting multiple objects. If I hold down Control and click, then I'm taking away objects from that selection. If I hold Control and Shift, I can go around my selected objects and highlight one of them to work on specifically. And if I want to deselect everything, I can click out into 3D space on something that's not an object, just somewhere in the background, and I will unselect everything. So you want to be careful when you have a large selection that you don't accidentally click into space or you'll lose that selection. But the nice part is you can also undo. So in Maya, you just have to tap Z and it'll undo your last action. So if I hit Z again and again, I can cycle back through the objects that I've selected in this case. If I want to redo something, then it's Shift Z. And if I want to change to my last view of something, I can click Option Z, and it'll move my view around, cycling through my different camera movements in reverse. Now, if I want to select multiple objects at once, I need to make sure I'm still on my selection tool. The hotkey for that, by the way, is Q. So this is handy. When I want my selection tool, I can just click the letter Q. And if I want to select multiple objects, I can drag a marquee around them. And any objects that I'm touching with the marquee, it will select those objects. Okay, so I can select just these two, or these three from any view. So I can go top down, select a couple here, select a couple there, add to that selection, use my marquee, deselect. If I want to control select, I can reduce the size of my selection, take things out. So that is how you select things. I also have another selection option here, which is the lasso tool. I can click that. If I drag my lasso tool around these objects, it will select everything that the lasso touches. So add to that selection by lassoing other things. And if I select too many things, I can control lasso select these things as well, the ones that I don't want. So you can add to a selection and subtract to a selection, which is really powerful. I find it very convenient to over-select a group of things that I want and then remove specific objects from that selection. You have to be able to think both ways, additively and subtractively, when you're doing selections. So selecting objects is going to help you be very precise about what you want to work on at any given time. Okay, back to my standard selection tool. I find that for most purposes I can get by with using my basic selector.